Well, Jason Vanderground, thank you so much for being here to talk about the He Gets Us campaign for the 2024 Super Bowl. How are you?
I'm doing great. It's good to be here. Good to have Super Bowl back.
Yeah, it's good to have you with us here to talk about this campaign. I can't believe we're already at Super Bowl 2024 already. I remember the ad campaign last year and the huge impact it had on the country. And obviously, upwards of 100 million people are expected to be tuning in to the Super Bowl this weekend. Talk a bit about the logistics, how this ad campaign came together, your role in it, and why this is so important, why this is a passion project for you.
Yeah, so it really started with just an invitation that everyone has something in the message for Jesus. That his message was for every single person, and so we're here in Vegas doing a lot of different things, sharing Jesus' unconditional love, his radical forgiveness, his kindness, his grace, and those qualities are confounding to people right now, especially in such divisive times that we live in.
Yeah. Something that I think is really inspiring and something that people might not know, I didn't know until I was reading a little bit more about it, is that the He Gets Us ad campaign, obviously about Jesus and the way that Jesus would interact with culture and society, kind of put in modern day context. Y'all actually do a whole lot more than just run campaigns. As you said, you're on the ground there in Las Vegas. You're partnering with organizations like the Salvation Army and providing food, groceries, meals to poor people in the area who maybe aren't able to provide food for themselves. Talk a bit about some of the initiatives that go alongside with the ad campaign itself.
Yeah, I think in the first year we learned that He Gets Us was going to be effective in getting people to see Jesus in just a new way. And like you said, 100 million people watching the Super Bowl. I think after the Super Bowl last year, it was like two-thirds of all American adults were familiar with He Gets Us. And then they're going to the website and they're exploring it. I think we have about 1.5 million visitors, unique visitors on the website every month. The part that we were looking to solve for is how can we create these experiences where people go, okay, that's the love of Jesus. That's the kindness of Jesus on display. And then we wanted to have a very diverse group of individuals involved in that so that it would be people who were Jesus followers, people who were kind of unsure, maybe even skeptical about Jesus, but that they could serve together in the community. So we're doing a number of very interesting things here over the few days leading up to the Super Bowl.
So the campaign itself, the videos, the commercials that'll be airing, there's one longer commercial and then a shorter follow up commercial that's going to be part of the Super Bowl ad campaign itself. Talk a bit about the themes that are going to be in this year's ads.
Yeah, the theme is all about love your neighbor. And so you're right. There's this longer 60-second spot that runs closer to the game so people can be watching for that. And then one later in the game that will be follow up to that. And I think when we look at, 2024 and the year that we're kind of all anticipating, it's a presidential election year. It's already divisive. And so as that gets amplified, we were just asking ourselves, what unique message would Jesus say in a moment like this? And so we look back at the times that he lived in and what did he say when he was confronted with moments like this? And he was very overt and sharing his unconditional love for everybody. And he continued to invite everybody into that conversation. And so that's what we're trying to do here, both through the ads and then also, like you mentioned, several different service events that are happening leading up to the Super Bowl.
Yeah. I want to ask you too, for people who are believers, maybe a part of a church in their local community, wherever they're watching it, how can this really, it's an evangelistic tool, right? It's exposing people to Jesus, some for the first time, some in a fresh way, giving them a new perspective. And maybe it'll, pique interest, right? They're willing to maybe have conversations, ask questions that they might not have asked before seeing the ad. How can Christians in their local communities really capitalize on this ad campaign to start conversations about faith, about Jesus in their own communities with their friends and family members?
Yeah, I think, when we look at the idea of loving your neighbor, which was one of the greatest commands that Jesus gave us, a lot of it is understanding who our neighbors are. And so we're intrigued by this idea of like, how do we identify who our neighbors are? And the people who act like us, think like us, believe like us, vote like us, like it's really easy for us to see them as our neighbors. I think the challenge a lot of times is to look at people who talk differently, think differently, believe differently, and go, you know what, they're my neighbor too. So even if I don't exactly agree with them, I still have this command from Jesus that I have to wrestle with of what does it look like to unconditionally love them? And so that's something that we all want to live up to, is to be able to demonstrate love and kindness and forgiveness. And so I think it's first just doing that. And that's what we're out on the street here in Vegas doing. We have a very large floral activation, and it's this helmet that's about 15 feet tall, made completely out of flowers. And as people walk by, we're offering them a flower, actually two flowers, one to keep and then one to give away to somebody else. And it just starts creating these little moments of like, well, why would you do this? And so all of that points back to Jesus and the way that he first treated us, and then the way that we want to treat others. And so I think that heart attitude, cultivating that within ourselves, and then just being very good listeners. I think that's one of the things that I hear a lot from people who see the campaign is there's just this humble approach, and you're willing to listen and allow people to explore on their own terms. Those are really key things, I think, for current Jesus followers to keep in mind.
When you go back to the genesis of this campaign, of the He Gets Us campaign, when it started now a few years ago, did you anticipate the kind of response that it was going to get? Did you anticipate that, upwards of 100 million people would be watching this and that it would be making a real impact on society? Because I know the ad last year, it aired at the Super Bowl, but then, of course, it ended up kind of going viral all over social media. And I'm sure some of that is going to happen all over again. So did you ever anticipate this kind of resonance in our culture?
Yeah, we would start by saying, "Whoa, we're surprised by this." And then we were like, "You know what? We shouldn't be surprised at all by what's happening. We should just be delighted." And so to know that there hadn't been anything faith oriented in the Super Bowl in 10 years. And so here comes an ad, very much about Jesus, that gets put right in between ads about, beer and chips and all the fun and celebration of the Super Bowl. And people go, that's actually the most interesting message in the whole game. And so
Mm.
that would have been really hard to anticipate, but we just keep we see his handiwork in it, and we're just delighted by it. And so it's just a joy to be back in the Super Bowl again, being able to share his message, really on the biggest stage that we have in American culture.
Yeah. As we're rounding out the conversation, I want to ask you how you have seen the Lord work. How have you seen God in the midst of planning this? Because there are a lot of logistical moving parts in making of this happen, not just the ad itself, but also the opportunities that you've had to partner with other organizations there on the ground in Las Vegas, whether it's providing food or it's that huge flower helmet you were talking about, and just kind of spreading joy throughout the community. How have you seen God orchestrate some of these partnerships throughout this process?
Yeah, it's been seeing so many different people come together. And so, with the floral activation, being able to put it out on Fremont Street Experience, working with them, or having UNLV and the Salvation Army join with us in the service event that we're going to do at LV Reach in the inner city tomorrow. Seeing athletes, Brandon Cooks and Stephon Gilmore, are working with us today. Michael Pittman yesterday, or just actors and artists coming around saying, I've been looking for a way to share this confounding love of Jesus, and you've created something that can unify us around that so that we can share it out with fans and followers of the Super Bowl and of many of the other major cultural moments that we have in our country.
Yeah. I think going into an election year, as you said earlier on in our conversation, people are kind of bracing for impact when it comes to what's to come, right? The election that's to come. And it's only going to get, I think, even more contentious. So things like this that point us back to Jesus, point us back to the things of eternity. That's always encouraging. I think it's what matters at the end of the day. So after everything is said and done, the ads have aired for the Super Bowl. What are you hoping people walk away thinking about?
It's what we've, as we get ready for it, have been thinking about, which is just what does it mean to love my neighbor? Who is my neighbor? How can I be thinking about them? What does it look like to love them? And so to see the people around you, to see their needs, to see their need for a friend or for conversation, and to be focused first and foremost on that. And yes, we'll still have differences over many different things, but we feel like this, if we can have a layer of listening and understanding and showing unconditional love to each other, like Jesus did to us, we think that'll make a significant difference in the year that we experience together.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Well, Jason Vanderground, thank you so much for taking some time to talk with us. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.